What's up, fam? Thanks for tuning in to the first episode of The Breakdown. We're excited for all of you who are tuning in. For those of you who have subscribed since the beginning, we appreciate and love the support. Today we have a very special topic that we want to talk about, something that I think all of us have a bit of an opinion on regarding the way we grew up and stuff like that. So I hope that you guys can continue the conversation after the video finishes on the comment section, wherever at, but we'd love to hear your opinions and thoughts on this topic. So today we're going to talk about Christianity and culture. What I mean by culture is like today's culture, pop culture, you know, all the trendy things that we see outside of church and Christianity. How do they mix and what are our opinions on it? I think for all of y'all, when y'all hear Christianity and culture, what's something that comes to mind?
I mean, thinking in like times that I grew up in, they were two things that did not mix. Something that was completely different categories, not in one.
You know, it was like Christianity, and then you had like the world culture outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
To me, it was a lot of tradition stuff. A lot of traditions.
Yeah, I got that. So going on with what Elvin was talking about, kind of what Susie was talking about, that there was a lot of tradition and a lot of things that didn't really quite mix. Susie, tell us a little bit how Christianity was for you and growing up, how they mixed them together.
So I grew up as a pastor's kid. My parents were pastors pretty much all my life, and growing up in church, you saw a lot of separation, compared to the outside world or the outside culture. Because when I was growing up in the church that I went to, it was like those strict Pentecostal churches, and the women sat on one side and the men sat on one side, and the signs were up there saying men and women, and they had to be separate. So that was one thing that you knew growing up. You weren't supposed to sit with the guys, you were supposed to sit with the women. So
Wow.
that's a little extreme.
It's pretty extreme, huh?
What about you?
With me, it was a lot about the dress code. They had a dress code in church, and I remember that if you didn't follow that dress code, you were either labeled as that you didn't really know about Jesus and God. You know, they just kind of looked at you like an outsider, and it was very weird. You know, if you invited a friend, he came with jeans or with whatever, you know, on like that, they would kind of look at him like, oh yeah, he's not up in that level yet. And you know, even when it was a crazy.
I mean, I think from speaking from like a Hispanic perspective of the way we grew up in those small Pentecostal churches, is that, you know, there was a certain like way that a holy person looked. Like if you were a Christian, you were supposed to look this image. If not, you know, you were gonna be condemned. You were sinful. You were going to hell. All this type of stuff.
Yep.
Like there was all this shade thrown at you. But I think that back in the day, you were supposed to look a certain type of way. You were supposed to make sure you always walked around everywhere like this. You know, because you didn't want to sin by smiling or being too like much of a fool. And I think that a lot of the times that people just put these like ideas like, oh, if you act like this, it means you're very holy and connected with God. But if you act like this way, you're worldly and you know you're very sinful and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. So when I was growing up, like Elvin was saying, traditions, the women had to wear long skirts. You couldn't wear pants. You know, like wearing pants was a sinful thing. You were of the world if you didn't wear a skirt to church. Like just crazy extreme things like that.
So tell me about like today. So I know we're in 2016. It's kind of new. There's a lot of changes that have happened in church over the 15 years. So what is the difference with Christianity and the culture nowadays?
Well, what I see a lot is that there's a lot of more choices of music out there. And before it was a very old school type of vibe, and you could tell that the kids from now, like us, the young people, we're not gonna get down with like, you know, little songs like that. You know?
It's like your top 10 was actually the only 10 artists that existed.
Yeah. And you know, now like we see like Lecrae, Andy, and we see all the rappers coming up, and a lot of EDM stuff too. You know, that is stepping up, and it's bringing a lot of diversity too, and a lot of people are liking this, and you know, it's making a big impact.
Most definitely. Anything, Susie?
Yeah, my same thing, music-wise. Like, you know, now you hear like Hillsong, Young and Free, and they have like a lot of techno and a lot of EDM in their music, and it's something that the youth or even the older people nowadays can relate to a little bit more than, you know, los coritos del himnario. You know, it's a little more that you can connect to and feel a little more on a personal level.
And just to be clear, it's nothing against them.
Absolutely not.
You know, like you could feel the presence with those songs too. It's just that, you know, generations change and everything. So, like the young people from now, right now, what's trending is rap and EDM and stuff like that. So a lot of young people would, just like Susie said, would kind of like feel more into that type of vibe.
Yeah,
that,
it's more relatable.
More relatable.
Well, but for real, I think that the phrase that people say that there's a church for everybody is very true. I think that the reality of it is that if you like that type of stuff, like my parents, they love their corridos, they love their himnarios, and they love that flow. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that you can glorify God with that type of stuff. But I think that there's also a diversity, or there's room for the people like us who love rap, who love to turn up, all of course in a holy way and glorifying God as we do it. A lot of times, I want to talk about the positive and negatives that has happened as we've seen in the Hispanic community, or at least in the Hispanic churches as we grew up in. A lot of times, there was a very, like, people were afraid to evolve. People were afraid to like move into this new era because they were like, oh, you know what, that's not godly.
Yes.
But I don't know about y'all. What are some of the negatives you've seen with the culture and Christianity back in the day and today that you still kind of see floating around?
I mean, I guess just the judgment. I mean, it's more for those who are set in their ways and don't want to see anybody else doing a different type of worship, or loving on God the way they want to. They want to see it done the specific way that they're doing it. And it's crazy to think that that's still going on, but it is. Some people are just so set in their ways, and they think that their way is so much more right than somebody else's way to worship God, that all they do is push those people away instead of bringing them a little bit closer to God.
Yeah, and another thing then about judgment, there's also a lot of like stuff that happens too, especially with the way that you probably look at times at church. Just like I said earlier, it was a big problem before, and at times, when people try to kind of like have their own style at church, and probably come like with some skinny jeans or Vans or whatever, right? And people kind of looked at them like, oh, he's not worthy to be up here in the stage, and maybe he's a good talent of singing, maybe a good drummer. And it's crazy to think that, because people just kind of like go into like that appearance wise. But you know what, God does never look at your appearance. He's always looking at your heart, and he wants to see how willing you are to actually step up and be who you are.
I like that. I always think though that there's always that happy medium you gotta find. Tampoco nos vamos a pasar la raya, and I think it's common sense with that as well. But I think that it's not about our appearance, or the way we sing the songs, or the way we do videos, anything that we do in the church, or the way we work and stuff like that. I think that in anything that we do, we can glorify God. It's very important to realize that there's not a certain like key thing that you have to follow. Of course, God is a holy God, and we must not fall into that sinful life. But I think we can be diverse, we can be ourselves, and that's the most important thing, is being ourselves, because through the way that we can diversify, we can reach more people. I think that's a major key, that lately that the people were pushed away from church because of so much judgment, but nowadays like we see that we're able to reach more crowds by being ourselves and just embracing the culture, as well as showing that Christians can get down to. We can have fun. We can do big parties and events and all glorify God what we're doing. And so that's very important.
Yes.
So I don't know about y'all, but what do you think? Is it important to embrace culture nowadays?
I think so. To me, it's like nowadays, we all have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and instead of posting some silly meme that's going to make somebody laugh, you could post something nice that's going to encourage them or give them a little love. Or even if you post a selfie and it's smiling and you got a text under it from the Bible, like that's something that can encourage them. They see your smile, they see how happy you are, and then they read the text and they realize, oh wait, is that God making her happy? I want that happiness. And it's just such a good form to be able to reach other people and spread the gospel.
Yeah, I think that it goes into say like, girl, if you want to get your hair cut, you want to get your hair dyed, go for it, And if you want to do like, selfie at church and have that stuff like that, I think people are like, yo, she can do that and she goes to church. A lot of people sometimes think like, oh, I'm going to become a nun when I have to become a Christian.
Yeah,
that's not the case at all.
Girl, be on fleek at church. It's all good.
Wear your J's, wear your skinny jeans, and you can still glorify God. What's up, fam? It's George. Thanks so much for tuning in to our first episode of The Breakdown. This is part 1. We hope that you can just like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what you thought about the first part, and definitely tune in next week for the next half.